Vivienne Walker thought she was alone in that dusty alleyway, but she was dead wrong. It was 1878 in Salida, Colorado, and the morning sun was already baking the dirt streets into hard clay. Vivienne was 22, tough as old leather, and trying to keep her parents home from the bank. She walked fast, head down, clutching a package like it held the crown jewels. She knew the rules of this town. Don't look the miners in the eye. Don't walk past the Silver Dollar Saloon alone. And never, ever cross a Thornton. But that morning, the rules didn't matter. Because Leland Thornton was waiting for her. He stepped out from the shadows, smelling like stale whiskey and bad intentions. He was the son of Augustus Thornton, the man who owned the mines, the mayor, and half the souls in the valley. Leland didn't ask for things. He took them. "Miss Walker," he drawled, blocking her path. "You've been avoiding me." Vivienne tried to step around him. "I have work to do, Leland. Move." He didn't move. He laughed, and then he grabbed her. This wasn't a flirtation. This was an abduction. Two of his hired goons stepped out behind him, grinning like wolves. They grabbed her arms, lifting her feet right off the ground. She screamed, kicking and thrashing, but the alley was empty. They weren't taking her to the jail. They were dragging her toward the back door of the saloon. Vivienne knew exactly what happened to women who went into that back room with Leland Thornton. They came out broken, or they didn't come out at all. She bit down on a hand clamped over her mouth, tasting blood. The man yelped, but he didn't let go. They kicked open the door, throwing her into the dark, smoky room. It was quiet. Too quiet. Leland was laughing now, unbuckling his belt. "Nobody's gonna hear you, darling. Nobody cares." But he was wrong, because sitting in the corner, nursing a black coffee, was a man who cared a whole lot about people who hurt women. He stood up. The chair scraped against the floorboards like a gunshot. He was tall, dust on his coat, a hat pulled low, and he was standing very, very still. Leland sneered. "Sit down, drifter. This is private family business." The stranger didn't sit. He took one step forward, then another. "Let her go," he said. His voice sounded like gravel crunching under a boot heel. Leland laughed again. "Get him, boys." The two goons rushed the stranger. It should have been over in seconds. 2 on 1. Easy math. But the stranger moved like smoke. He ducked the first swing, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted. There was a sickening crack. The goon howled, dropping to his knees. The second man hesitated. That was his mistake. The stranger spun, driving a boot into the man's gut, sending him crashing through a poker table. Chips and cards flew like confetti. Now it was just Leland, and he wasn't laughing anymore. He pulled a pistol from his coat, a cowardly little derringer. "I'll kill you," he screamed. Vivienne scrambled back, pressing herself against the wall. She watched the stranger's hand hover over his hip. He didn't even have his gun drawn yet. Leland fired. The shot blew a hole in the floorboards as the stranger drew. It was a blur, one motion. Bang! Leland screamed, clutching his shoulder. The stranger hadn't killed him. He'd shot the gun right out of his hand. Silence fell over the saloon. The stranger walked over, kicked the gun away, and looked down at the whimpering man. "Next one goes between your eyes. Get out." Leland scrambled up, clutching his bleeding arm, and ran. His goons limped after him. Vivienne was shaking. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. The stranger offered a hand. It was rough, calloused, but gentle. "You all right, ma'am?" I think so," she stammered. "Who are you?" He tipped his hat. "Samuel Yates, and we need to move. Now." "Why?" "Because men like that don't run away to hide," Samuel said, his eyes scanning the windows. "They run away to reload. He was right. Vivienne didn't know it yet, but she had just started a war. They barely made it to her cabin before the trouble started. Samuel checked the windows, his face grim. "You got a gun?" Vivienne pulled a double-barreled shotgun from above the mantel. "My father's." "Good. Load it." "You think they're coming back?" "I know they are," Samuel said, "and they're bringing friends." Vivienne felt a cold knot in her stomach. She looked at this man, this stranger who had risked his life for her. "Why are you doing this? You could just ride out." Samuel looked at her, really looked at her. "I got a sister back in Georgia. Someone didn't help her when she needed it. I won't make that mistake twice." Before Vivienne could ask what he meant, the ground began to shake. Hoofbeats, a lot of them. They went to the window. A cloud of dust was rising on the road from town. "Stay down," Samuel ordered. 6 riders. And at the front wasn't Leland. It was his father. Augustus Thornton. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. White suit, silver hair, cold, dead eyes. He rode right up to the porch. "Mr. Yates," he bellowed, "I believe you have something of mine." Samuel stepped out onto the porch, keeping his hand near his holster. "If you mean your son's pride, I'm afraid I shot it off." Augustus didn't smile. "You shot my boy. In this town, that's a death sentence." "He was attacking a woman," Samuel shot back. "He was disciplining a disrespectful subject," Augustus corrected. "Now you have 2 choices. You can walk out here and let my men hang you, or we can burn this cabin down with both of you inside." Vivienne stepped out, leveling the shotgun at Augustus's chest. "Get off my land." Augustus looked at her like she was a bug he wanted to crush. "Vivienne, foolish girl, you think this drifter can save you? I own the bank, I own the law, I own the water." "You don't own us," she said, cocking the hammers. The sound was loud in the quiet morning. Augustus stared at the shotgun barrels. He calculated the odds. He could kill them, sure, but he might take a load of buckshot to the chest first. "Have it your way," he spat. "But know this, no one defies me. By tomorrow you won't be able to buy a loaf of bread in this town. By next week you won't have a roof over your head." He turned his horse. "Let's go." They watched the riders disappear. Vivienne let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "He's going to starve us out." "No," Samuel said, a dangerous glint in his eye. "He's going to try, but he just made a mistake." "What mistake?" "He left us alive." But Augustus wasn't bluffing. By noon, the general store refused to sell to them. By sunset, the bank manager hand-delivered a notice calling in Vivienne's loan immediately. Full payment in 24 hours, or she lost the house. They were trapped. No food, no money, and a ticking clock. "We need allies," Samuel said, pacing the small kitchen. "We don't have any," Vivienne replied, despair creeping into her voice. "Everyone is terrified of him." "Not everyone." Samuel pointed out the window toward the mountains. "Who owns that ranch, the one that borders the mines?" "The Rockingham. That's Jacob Miller. But he's been fighting Thornton for years over water rights. He's barely hanging on." "Exactly," Samuel smiled. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Saddle up, Vivienne." They rode out under the cover of darkness. The moon was a sliver, providing just enough light to see the trail. But they weren't the only ones in the dark. Halfway to the ranch, Samuel stopped. He held up a hand. "Quiet." Vivienne listened. Nothing but the wind. "What is it?" "Smell that?" She sniffed the air. Wood smoke, and something else. Coal oil. "The bridge," Samuel whispered. "They're burning the bridge." It was the only way across the gorge to the Miller Ranch. If that bridge went down, they were cut off. "Hold on!" Samuel yelled, kicking his horse into a gallop. They tore down the trail. Ahead, orange flames licked at the wooden timbers of the bridge. 3 men were standing there, pouring more oil. Thornton's men. They saw Samuel and Vivienne coming. One of them raised a rifle. Crack! A bullet whizzed past Vivienne's ear. "Get your head down!" Samuel shouted. He drew his revolver and fired while riding at a full gallop. He hit the rifleman in the leg. The man screamed and fell toward the fire. The other 2 scrambled for their horses. They hadn't expected a fight. Samuel and Vivienne reached the bridge. The flames were climbing the supports. "We have to cross now," Samuel yelled. "It won't hold much longer." "It's burning," Vivienne screamed. "Ride!" Samuel slapped the rump of her horse. The animal leaped forward, hooves thundering on the smoking wood. Vivienne felt the heat singe her skirts. She heard the timber groan and crack beneath her. She urged the horse faster, eyes fixed on the other side. She cleared the end just as a massive support beam gave way behind her. She spun around. Samuel was still on the other side. "Samuel!" He backed his horse up. He was going to jump the gap. "Don't!" she screamed. "It's too far!" He didn't listen. He spurred his horse. The beast launched itself into the air, over the flames, over the black drop of the gorge. For a second, time stopped. Then the horse landed hard on the dirt, stumbling but finding its footing. Behind him, the entire bridge collapsed into the canyon with a roar of sparks and timber. Samuel rode up to her, patting his shivering horse. He looked back at the burning wreckage. "Well," he said, dusting off his coat. "Burned our bridges. Guess there's no going back now." Vivienne looked at him, heart hammering against her ribs. "You're crazy." "Maybe," he grinned. "But we're alive. Let's go see Mr. Miller." Jacob Miller was a hard man, but he knew desperation when he saw it. He listened to their story, stroking his beard. "Thornton wants my water," Miller grunted. "He wants your land. Seems we're all in the same pot." "So let's boil him," Samuel said. "How?" Miller asked. "He's got 50 men. I've got 5 ranch hands and a pregnant wife." "He's got men," Samuel agreed, "but he's overconfident. He thinks he's already won. He thinks we're cut off." Samuel leaned over the map on Miller's table. "When is your next cattle drive?" "2 days. But I can't move the herd. Thornton's men are blocking the pass. If I can't get these cows to the railhead, I can't pay my debts. Thornton buys me out for pennies." "He's blocking the pass?" Samuel pointed to a thin, jagged line on the map. "What about this trail? Through the Devil's Throat?" Miller laughed. "That's a goat path. You can't drive 2,000 head of cattle through there. It's too narrow, too steep." "It's the only way he won't be watching," Samuel said. "Vivienne and I will draw them off. We'll make a scene at the main pass. While they're busy with us, you push the herd through the throat." "It's suicide," Miller said. "For you, and for the cows." "Have you got a better idea?" Vivienne asked. Miller looked at his wife, Martha, heavy with child in the corner. He looked at the foreclosure notice on his desk. "No," he sighed. "I don't." The plan was set, but nothing ever goes to plan. 2 days later, Samuel and Vivienne rode openly toward the main pass. They made sure they were seen. They rode slow, defiant. Sure enough, a dozen of Thornton's riders were waiting. They had blocked the canyon with a wagon and armed men. Leland was there, his arm in a sling, looking vindictive. "Well, look who it is," Leland sneered. "The lovebirds, come to surrender." "Just passing through," Samuel said, his hand resting on his horn. "Nobody passes," Leland said. "My father's orders. You turn around or we shoot." "We're not turning around," Vivienne shouted. "Then die," Leland signaled his men. Suddenly, Samuel grabbed Vivienne's reins. "Run!" They wheeled their horses and bolted toward the tree line. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets kicked up dirt around the horses' hooves. They weren't trying to escape. They were trying to lead them on a chase. "Keep them following us," Samuel yelled. "Give Miller time." They rode hard into the rocky foothills. Leland and his men were right behind them, whooping and firing. But then, something happened they didn't expect. A shot rang out from the front. Samuel's horse reared. He was thrown from the saddle, hitting the ground hard. Vivienne skidded to a stop. "Samuel!" She looked up. 3 men stepped out from the rocks ahead of them. More of Thornton's men. It was a trap. Thornton had anticipated they would try a diversion. He had men everywhere. "End of the line," the lead man said, cocking his rifle. Vivienne raised her shotgun, but she was surrounded. Leland rode up, breathless and grinning. "Smart," Leland spat. "But not smart enough. Did you really think we wouldn't watch the tree line?" He looked down at Samuel, who was groaning in the dirt. "Tie him up. I want to drag him back to town behind my horse." "And the girl?" a man asked. Leland's eyes went dark. "She comes with me." Vivienne felt a cold despair wash over her. They had failed. Miller would be caught in the throat. She would be. She couldn't think about it. Leland dismounted, walking toward her. "Now where were we?" Suddenly the ground began to tremble. Not hoofbeats this time. It was a low rumble, like thunder. It grew louder and louder. Leland stopped. "What is that?" Samuel started to laugh. He lay in the dirt, bleeding, and laughed. "You watched the pass," Samuel wheezed. "You watched the tree line, but you forgot to watch the mountain." "What are you talking about?" The rumble became a roar. Above them, on the ridge of the canyon, the silhouette of a rider appeared. It was Jacob Miller, and behind him, 2,000 head of cattle. Miller wasn't taking the cattle through the throat. That was a lie Samuel had planted, knowing Thornton had spies. They were driving the herd right down the steep canyon wall. "Stampede!" someone screamed. It was chaos. The massive herd poured over the ridge like a brown waterfall of muscle and horns. They were sliding, running, crashing down the slope directly toward Thornton's men. Leland screamed. His men scattered, abandoning their horses, running for the rocks. "Get up!" Vivienne yelled, reaching down for Samuel. He grabbed her arm, and she hauled him up behind her. The cows were on them. Dust choked the air. The sound was deafening. They were in the middle of the storm. "Ride with the flow," Samuel shouted in her ear. "Don't fight it." They galloped amidst the frenzied cattle, horns scraping against their legs. It was a miracle they weren't trampled. Thornton's men weren't so lucky. Vivienne saw horses toppling, men scrambling up trees, weapons lost in the dust. The herd crashed through the blockade at the pass, smashing the wagon into splinters. They poured out into the valley, unstoppable. They rode the wave of beef all the way to the river. When the dust settled, they were alive. Jacob Miller rode up, grinning like a lunatic. "Did you see their faces? I've never seen a man run so fast in chaps." "We did it," Vivienne gasped, sliding off her horse. "We got them through." But Samuel wasn't celebrating. He was staring back toward town. "We won the battle," he said quietly. "But Thornton isn't done. He's going to be desperate now." "Let him come," Miller said, patting his rifle. "We've got money for the bank now." "It's not about money anymore," Samuel said. "It's about revenge." They camped by the river that night. The stars were bright, but the mood was heavy. Vivienne sat by the fire, stitching up a tear in Samuel's coat. "You knew," she said. "You knew there was a spy." "I suspected," Samuel admitted. "Miller's foreman. He was asking too many questions." "So you used us as bait?" "I used us as bait," Samuel corrected. I would never put you in danger. I wasn't standing in myself. Vivienne looked at him. The firelight danced in his blue eyes. He was bruised, dirty, and dangerous, and she had never trusted anyone more. What happens when this is over? She asked softly. If we survive? Samuel looked at the darkness. I suppose I keep moving. That's what I do. Maybe you could stop, she said. Maybe you could stay. He looked at her, and the hardness melted away for a second. Vivienne, A gunshot shattered the moment. Dirt kicked up into the fire. Ambush! Samuel tackled her, rolling them into the darkness away from the light. Bullets tore through the campsite. It wasn't Leland. It wasn't a few hired guns. Torches appeared on the ridge, a line of fire. Augustus Thornton had emptied the town. He had brought everyone, every paid gun, every corrupt deputy. 50 men. Surround them, Augustus's voice boomed. No prisoners. They were pinned against the river. Miller's men returned fire, but they were vastly outnumbered. We can't hold them, Miller yelled. We need to cross the river. The river's flooded with snowmelt, Vivienne shouted. It's too deep. It's that, or a bullet. Samuel grabbed her hand. Into the water, now! They plunged into the icy current. The water was freezing, stealing the breath from their lungs. The current grabbed them, spinning them away. Vivienne lost her grip on Samuel's hand. Samuel! She went under. Darkness. Cold. She tumbled against rocks. She fought for the surface, gasping for air, only to be pulled down again. Then, strong arms grabbed her, dragged her. She was hauled onto a mud bank, coughing up water. Samuel was there, dripping wet, shivering violently. Miller and a few hands were scattered down the bank. They had lost the horses. They had lost their guns. They're crossing the bridge upstream, Miller chattered. They'll cut us off. We need a place to make a stand, Samuel said, scanning the dark terrain. There's an old mine shaft, Vivienne said, pointing to a dark opening in the cliff face. My father used to prospect there. It's defensible. Go. They scrambled up the slope to the mine entrance, just as Thornton's men reached the riverbank. They dove into the blackness of the tunnel. Block the entrance, Samuel yelled. They heaved loose rocks, old timbers, anything they could find, creating a barricade. Outside, the torches drew closer. Come out, rats, Leland's voice. He sounded unhinged. I want to hear you scream. They were trapped in a dead-end mine, wet, unarmed, and cornered. Is there another way out? Samuel asked. Maybe, Vivienne said. My father said this shaft connected to the old ventilation system, but it hasn't been used in 20 years. It could be collapsed. Better than staying here, Samuel said. Miller, give me your lighter. They moved deeper into the earth. The air was stale. The silence was heavy. They walked for what felt like hours. The tunnel twisted and turned. Suddenly, Vivienne stopped. Do you hear that? A ticking sound. Tick, tick, tick. Samuel held the lighter up. They weren't in an empty tunnel. They were in a storage room. Crates were stacked to the ceiling. Old crates. Samuel wiped the dust off a label. His face went pale. Dynamite, he whispered. This is Thornton's illegal stockpile. He's been hoarding explosives to bypass mining regulations. There's enough here to blow up the mountain, Miller whispered. Or, Samuel said, a slow, terrifying smile spreading across his face. Enough to blow up the entrance we just blocked. You want to blow us up? Vivienne asked. No, I want to wait until they breach the barricade. When they're all inside, we blow the tunnel behind them, trap them. But how do we get out? Samuel pointed to a vertical shaft with a rusty ladder. Up. It was a gamble, a massive one. They could hear the men outside clearing the rocks. They were coming in. "Climb," Samuel ordered. "I'll rig the fuse." "I'm not leaving you," Vivienne said. "Go. I need you to pull the others up if the ladder breaks." She hesitated, then kissed him. Hard. "Don't you dare die, Samuel Yates." She climbed. The ladder groaned. Rust flaked off in her hands. Below, Samuel was stripping wires, jamming a blasting cap into a stick of dynamite. She reached the top, a grate opening out onto the hillside. She pulled Miller up. Then the ranch hands. They looked down the shaft. Samuel was still at the bottom. "They're in!" Miller yelled. "I hear them in the tunnel." Below, Samuel heard them too. "There they are!" Leland screamed. "Get them!" Samuel lit the fuse. He scrambled up the ladder. He climbed like a man possessed. "Shoot him!" Augustus roared from below. Bullets clanged against the iron rungs. Samuel was halfway up. The fuse was burning fast. "Samuel!" Vivian reached down through the grate. He lunged for the top rung. His hand slipped. Vivian grabbed his wrist. Miller grabbed his other arm. They heaved, just as they pulled him over the edge and rolled away. Boom! The mountain shook. The ground heaved up like a wave. A plume of dust and smoke erupted from the shaft, blowing the grate into the sky. The tunnel below collapsed. Silence returned to the valley. Vivienne lay in the dirt, ears ringing, holding Samuel's hand. "Did we get them?" she whispered. Samuel crawled to the edge of the smoking hole. "We trapped them. They're alive, but they're buried. They'll be digging themselves out for a week." "By then," Miller said, standing up, "the marshal will be here. I've got proof of the illegal explosives now." It was over. Augustus Thornton and his son were dug out 3 days later by the federal marshal. They were in cuffs before they even got a sip of water. The trial was swift. The tyranny was broken. Salida breathed again. 6 months later, the sun was setting over the newly rebuilt bridge at the Rockingham Ranch. Vivienne stood on the porch of her cabin, fully paid off and freshly painted. She saw a rider coming down the road. He sat tall in the saddle. He wasn't drifting anymore. Samuel Yates dismounted and walked up the steps. He wasn't wearing his gun belt. "Evening, Miss Walker," he smiled. "Evening, Mr. Yates." She leaned against the railing. "You plan on staying for dinner?" "I plan on staying for breakfast, too," he said. "And lunch, and every dinner after that, if you'll have me." Vivienne didn't answer. She just opened the door. Because some stories don't end with a cowboy riding into the sunset. Some stories end with him coming home. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and dynamite, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more wild tales from the frontier. Who would you have sided with? Let us know in the comments.